my pleasure right now to welcome to our show today a woman who's written a very helpful book. It's called What's Eating Her Child? The Hidden Connections Between Food and Childhood Ailments. We're joined by Kelly Dorfman today. And Kelly, thanks for being with us today. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great. My pleasure.
I have to say, I'm very happy to read a book like this. As a kid, I dealt with food allergies and pollen allergies and all that. So I know you deal with that in the book. So thank you for writing this. I wish you'd written it about 25, 30 years ago.
Yes, but then I would have been a kid myself, right?
I really think you touch on a good point here. It's not just allergies. I mean, you're talking about how food can cure certain things or help certain ailments that children go through, but it really is kind of a wide-ranging subject, isn't it?
It is, and I think that's why I wanted to write the book. I wrote the book in a series of stories, so it would be interesting because a lot of nutrition books are kind of dry. Mm-hmm. But I wanted to write it like CSI Nutrition, you know, the TV show. So there'd be like stories. So that's how the book is structured. And I wanted parents and also caretakers and even grandparents to know that nutrition is a lot more powerful than you might think. It can affect children's moods. It can affect their performance at school. It can affect reflux, ear infections, sleep patterns, all kinds of things that we don't think about nutrition first.
You see today what, now I know kids have always probably eaten junk, you know, going back to day one, but I mean, it seems like today the diets of everybody, but kids in particular, is a lot worse. Is that causing more health problems?
I think so, and they just had a study that came out in October that found that 40% of kids' diets now are pretty much snack food. So it's not even food in the diet. It's crackers and cookies and bars and empty calorie foods. And we're all busy and on the run, and yes, we're doing a lot more of that than is probably healthy.
You talk about certain problems that kids have. I think a lot of parents have dealt with this one, the picky eater, and I know you give some tips in there, maybe how to correct that. I never had that problem, but it seems like kids have that. Well, why is that?
Well, for one thing, when you grew up, if you didn't eat your dinner, your mom probably said, well, that's it for you, buddy.
That's it. Yeah, that's what we heard.
Yeah, but now today's parents who are busy and working and feel bad that they don't spend more time with their kids, they whip out the frying pan and make a cheese sandwich or pull out a bowl of cereal or something. It's a very different philosophy about how to raise kids and in relationship to food.
Right.
And a lot of parents are also terrified that if they talk to their kids about food and say, you better eat those vegetables, that they're going to grow up and have an eating disorder.
Mm.
And that's actually not true, by the way. The eating disorder that most kids have now, as you say, is picky eating. Yes, there are kids who have anorexia, and that's a big concern, but that's a smaller percentage of kids than kids who become almost tyrannical about food.
I think you talk about it in the book. You say, well, you know, this is your dinner right now. If you don't want it, you don't have to eat it, but you don't have to get anything else tonight, right? I mean, that's the way to correct that, you know.
Right. So it doesn't have to be that kind of harsh, but I think what you can do, especially when kids are very, very picky, you might have to transition them into a place where they eat with the rest of the family. But I think parents need to understand that there's a normal developmental thing that happens at 2. At 2, kids discovered that when they do something, there's the results of their action. So when they put the sneaker in the toilet and flush it, it makes a cool noise. And so they keep doing that, you know. So when they find out, you know what, if I close my mouth, the food goes away. And I try to not go to school, or I try not to go to grandma's, but they make me go, but gosh darn it, the one thing I get to control is my food.
Right.
And so that's why very often the battles start with food, and we don't want to get into a food battle, but a 2-year-old or a 4-year-old or even a 10-year-old is not cognitively ready to make decisions about their whole diet. And so it's not appropriate to give it to them. So it's not that you're forcing it down their throats, but you have to set up standards and let them know what good eating is.
You're talking in the book about the EAT program. Can you give a capsule version of what that is?
Yeah, this is a program to help to transition people, Doug, from picky eating into a more robust diet. And it's based on the idea that eating is an acclimated activity. In other words, you kind of do what you get used to. And people don't eat things unless they've been exposed to it a number of times and they get used to it. But what we do instead is we ask little Jonathan to have one piece of broccoli, and they say, ugh, I don't like it, and we don't make them do it again. They say, oh, I guess he doesn't like it. Rather than realizing, you know what, he has to try that 10, 14, 20 times before he can get used to it. And so you take one bite of the food and you repetitively introduce it and ask your child to eat something new, the same thing over and over again until they can get acclimated to it. And you'd be shocked how well it works.
And you do have a whole section in the book. I think this was the most interesting for me, I think, about moods. You have a section on kids that maybe don't want to fall asleep or kind of hyperactive, and a lot of that is diet-related, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. The moody thing is also becoming an epidemic, but what's really scary about what's changed in the last 20 or 30 years is that when the kids are diagnosed now, they're also given medications. Even at 6 and 7, they're giving SSRI drugs or other medications that were used only for adults in very severe cases a couple of decades ago. So dealing with this nutritionally first, if there is a nutritional link, then wouldn't it be nice to try to avoid some of these more involved treatments?
Yeah, you see or hear stories about so many kids. A friend of mine's a teacher. Kids on Ritalin or other medications, or they're just almost uncontrollable. It's got to be difficult to deal with that. But I would think, not all cases, but in most cases, diet would probably be the way to handle that, right? I mean, all this medication can't be good.
It can't be good, and I think we can at least start with diet. What's very shocking to me is that I'll see kids on 2 or 3 medications, and not once has any of the medical people that have worked with them about their problem asked them what they're eating. And in one case, I saw a 6-year-old who was kicked out of school for sending a kid to the hospital. He was violent. He was on 2 medications. He ate sugar cereal for breakfast and lunch every single day. And when we took him off of that, he got 70% better in a week's time.
Yeah. Yeah, there's one thing. You go down the cereal aisle, you see a lot of. It tastes good, but it's about 90% sugar in it.
Yeah, I think that we have to. I mean, what was sad is that he'd been to a number of expensive specialists, and nobody said, well, is it possible he doesn't have the chemistry he needs to run his body? He was a delightful child when he was off sugar, but on sugar and all these artificial colors and flavors, he was monstrous.
Well, one little chapter that kind of hit home with me, I went through this as a kid a lot too, chronic ear infections. What can help with that? I know it might be too late for my childhood, but what can you do with that?
Well, I think you mentioned you did have some allergies when you were growing up, and you'll find this interesting that they did a study in the late 90s, actually, and they found that 90% of ear infections that kept coming back were related to food allergies and food sensitivities, and when they removed the foods, the ear infections went away, and the primary one was dairy products.
I was allergic to regular milk. I had to drink the evaporated. They tried the soy milk, and you talk about in the book as well. That didn't work either because that has a lot of the same properties. So they finally decided we'll use the evaporated milk, and that has helped. So yeah, interesting. Well, it's a fascinating book called "What's Eating Your Child: The Hidden Connections Between Food and Childhood Ailments." We've been talking with Kelly Dorfman. Kelly, you have a website people can get a hold of the book and maybe ask you a question if they want?
Absolutely. The website is what'seatingyourchild.com without any punctuation, and it has bonus materials and some other information.
Great. Well, pleasure to talk to you, and look forward to talking to you again sometime, and thanks for being with us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure.